Hey everybody, and welcome to another edition of Board Games Hitting My Table. This is for the second half of January 2022. So the first half of January was generally pretty good at playing all new games that I got over the Christmas period, and the second half of January I've got a lot of opportunity to play some old favourites. So this is the talk through of those favourites. So first up I have Cocopeli. So this one I think is the latest Stefan game at this point, but it's completely alien to a lot of his other designs. This one is a pretty light, almost family-friendly card-driven game, as you are basically trying to play cards out in front of you, and you play them in these different kind of, I don't know what you call them, festivals, and as long as they're active in front of you, you're going to get a certain power off them, and they can all synergize with each other in wonderful ways, but you have to be careful about how long you're going to keep them and exploit them, because if other people finish those columns by playing four, or I think it's 3 or 4 of the same card, then they are going to claim the victory points from the centre, and those victory points depreciate as the game goes on. So it's a really cool kind of push and pull. You know, how long do you want to use those powers, or when do you want to cash them in, get rid of them for points? So I introduced this one to another gamer friend of mine, and I think he really enjoyed it. I love the variability in this one. You know, you're never really going to have the same game twice. Just a really clean system that I think has held up quite well. And yeah, I'm still enjoying this one. So despite being very different to all of other Stefan games, this one is still going strong for me, and I think it's a real welcome change for him. So yeah, I had a really good game of that one, and I enjoyed it quite a lot. Next up, I'm going to go into some smaller games now. So this one is Matryoshka. This one, I've actually reviewed this one previously. This one I consider a very much underappreciated game that nobody talks about. I never hear anybody cover this one. It's a very simple set collection style game about these Russian dolls. And you're basically collecting these cards, but each round you are basically displaying what you can potentially be going for. And you're trying to create rows of these cards, but also columns of the same number. But you've got to kind of display to the other players like what cards you need, because there's this kind of back and forth trading, but you don't want to show too much of your hand, because if you do, then people are probably going to keep those cards from you, and to make sure that you're not scoring the big points. It's really nice actually, and I thought this one would, you know, the novelty would wear off quite quickly. But to be honest, every time I play this one, I enjoy it, and it still kind of keeps its place in my collection. So yeah, had a good game of this one. That is Matryoshka, a really nice and different set collection style game. Check it out if you can, because it is relatively cheap. Next up, I have Archaeology, a new expedition. So this is an older Phil Walker Harding game, a very simple set collection style game where you're collecting all these different archaeology cards, which score in this kind of sliding scale manner. You know, the more you collect them, the bigger points and multipliers you're going to get. However, you need to be careful not to hold on to them too long and cash them in quite early, because these sandstorms come along and wipe all your cards out, or half of your cards out. I will say that this one I liked when I first played it, and because there's quite a lot of variability in the setup, you can change these bonus cards that you put in. I think I like some of them more than others, and the one I played last time had this really cool kind of treasure trove kind of thing, where you would name a couple of cards and try to sift through the top 5 cards of that deck, and if you've got one of those matching cards, you could add it to your hand. I really like that, and I think this one is going to be a bit of a grower for me. I think it's got staying power because it is so clean, such an easy to understand concept, but the actual twists in the game, you know, those sandstorms are really enjoyable, and they add a lot of tension. So another really nice filler game that I think is going to stay in the collection for a long time. And yeah, I enjoy my play of this one. That is Archaeology. Next, I'm going to talk about Hashi. So this one I actually covered, I think it was on last month's roundup. So this one is a very different approach to the roll and write genre. And this one you are basically trying to connect these islands together by these numbers and these bridges. It's a very strange concept. You know, you normally think of roll and writes being that kind of, you know, get things in numerical order kind of thing. This one, very different. A very restrictive puzzle, as you are trying to connect these islands together. But once you've got these numbers and the connecting bridges on them perfectly, you're going to circle them, it's going to lock in that in place. You're trying to race to get a certain amount of these islands done, and yeah, it's a really restrictive puzzle. I do enjoy it. I like how different it feels. I'm not sure if it's amongst my favourite roll and writes, but it's probably, I don't know, it might be in the top 10. I think it's quite an interesting design that feels, again, a very exhausted genre of games, these roll and writes, but this one still manages to feel different, and I think this one might be a bit of a slow burner. But yeah, we had a game of this one. I didn't do too well, but I quite like the idea of this one, where each time you play it, you kind of get better at it. So that is Hashi, a decent little roll and write game. Let's go to some bigger games then. So we have the Legend of Brass Birmingham. So finally got Brass back to the table and talk about games that I kind of, each time I play it, I find new ways to try and better my previous score and be better at playing the game. I'm straight up, I'm terrible at this game. I kind of go through the motions, not really sure what I'm doing, and things kind of fall into place as the game goes on. But I still enjoy it nonetheless. It's a wonderful game by Martin Wallace. This one, or the last played we had, I think, I introduced it to another new player and they ended up winning the game. So yeah, it goes to show how bad I am at it, where someone on the first play beats somebody who's played it before. But yeah, this one, you're basically trying to connect these different routes together, try and manage these resources and upgrade these buildings to get victory points and money income. Wonderful Euro economic game that's considered one of the best of all times. I think this one has just so much to offer, and I really am kind of scratching the surface with this one because, again, I just really don't know what I'm doing. But when a game is like that and I still enjoy every second of playing it, that is a really good sign of a great game. So yeah, still really enjoying Brass Birmingham. Next up, I have Furnace. So Furnace, this one is really blown up within the last year. Very simple and straightforward engine building style game, as you are bidding on these different cards using this really awesome bidding mechanism, placing these tokens on them. But if you win the bid by placing the highest token, you win the card. But if you don't win the bid, you get the token multiplied by the resources on that card. I love that bidding system. And then after that, you're just running this engine, converting resources into points. We played with the restrictive variants where you have to play things in order. I absolutely love that because you end up making mistakes and efficiency cock-ups. But yeah, this one I think is really enjoyable. I've really enjoyed every single play of this one. It plays remarkably fast. And yeah, I can't really fault it because it fits a really nice bracket of being accessible but still thinky, satisfying. And yeah, that's going from strength to strength. That is Furnace. Next up, Docmus. This one, I covered this one a couple of months ago, and this was probably one of the biggest surprises of last year for me. I wasn't really expecting much from this one because I didn't really know much about it. I didn't really know much about the designer or anything. But this one takes that almost Reiner Knizia, through the desert kind of mechanism as you're placing these tokens down on the board and building up routes. But this one is so much more dynamic than that because, as you can see here, the board is modular and you're sliding them and you can rotate them and you're basically trying to put your pieces, because you're putting 3 pieces out at a time, to touch these different temples on the board. Or to spread as much as you can amongst the tiles because you're going to get points in lots of different ways. This one feels like a timeless design. It feels like Reiner Knizia's designed this because it is so clean. It's so easy to understand. Plays in about 30 minutes. And one of those games where you really do have to prioritise things as best as you can because things can get snatched or moved by your opponents because, as I said, this board is constantly in flux. So yeah, I really like this game. There's nothing really I don't like about it. That is Docmus. Next up, one of my favourites, we managed to get Amerigo back to the table. So we talked about Steffenfeld's newer game earlier. This one is one of his older, more classic ones. This one has a lot going on in it, as you are basically, I think I'm not going to flip this around over because pieces are going to go everywhere. But you have a cube tower in this game, and each cube that falls out from this tower is going to associate to a different action to kind of sail around to these islands. You can kind of set up these different colonies by building up these buildings, almost in this like polyomino style fashion. You're fighting off pirates. It's a really cool game that utilises that cube tower to the maximum. I love it. I love the way that you kind of start on the same track of all the other players because you always get to choose the same option, but you'll start to diverge off or kind of divert from the other players as you acquire more of these technology tiles and get more powerful in different fields of the game. So yeah, this one, I think I took a really heavy building approach where I tried to buy as much as I could as early as I could to control those public tiles because they're worth a lot of points. And yeah, exploited that as much as I could and ended up getting the win for this one. But this game, I've never had a bad game of it. It's one of my tried and tested Euros that anybody seems to like because it is that much fun. That is Amerigo, just a wonderful game. Next up, I have Free Ride. So this is obviously the German cover of it. But this one is the latest Friedman Freeze game. I rated this one quite highly on my, I think it was last month's roundup. Gave this one a show of quality without any hesitation. And you know what? When I played this one again with my brother and my mum, who hadn't played it before. This one went down an absolute treat. Just such a clean little game as you're trying to build up these routes by collecting these cards, and then you're basically building track, trying to connect city to city and fulfill these different tickets. So think of Ticket to Ride, but almost like a more Euro version of it, because you have to be a bit more efficient in order to not waste any movement, to not only drop off these tickets, but also pick up the new ones. And that's basically what this game consists of, just moving your train around, going city to city, building up these routes. But I love the interaction in this game. Is once you claim one of these tracks, you claim it as your own, and then if anybody else wants to use that track, they have to pay you some money for it. And money is very tight in this game, and is worth a lot of points at the end. But yeah, this one just strikes that wonderful balance of being accessible, but having a lot going on in it in terms of decision space and that efficiency puzzle, not wanting to waste any movement. And those games to me really do have really kind of come to the front of my collection recently. And Free Ride, I loved it the first time. Second time I liked it even more. So yeah, that is Free Ride. Definitely recommend checking that one out if you want, or maybe if you're a bit fatigued or want to go to that next step of Ticket to Ride, it's a really good option. So the final 3 games now. So we have Macro Crime City. So this one, another game that's really blown up in the last year or two. This one is like that Where's Waldo, Where's Wally style puzzle, as you are trying to solve the different murders that are going on in the city. But you have this massive map. It's absolutely gigantic. And you are basically looking for a certain crime scene, and then despite being a still image, you are actually backtracking on yourself to find out the story of these different kind of murders and crimes that happened. It's got a very bleak theme to it, which I absolutely love. I love how dark it is, despite looking so family friendly. And it's a real good laugh. It's a nice activity, really. It's not really a board game per se, but all the cases seem to be fun. They're all pretty standard stuff, but it's a nice experience that I think everybody should try. And I think it's just a nice, fun, just guaranteed fun, really. Just sit back, enjoy the process, and not worry about too much about getting competitive or anything like that, because you do work together. That is Macro Crime City. I'm nearly at the end of it. I think I played maybe 10 or 12 of the scenarios, but yeah, enjoyed everyone. So penultimately, I have Progress Evolution of Technology. This was another game that gained quite high on my rankings last month. This one is a pretty light and accessible civilization style game, card driven. As you are starting off with this very primitive technologies, discovering writing and paper and stuff, all the way up to the modern age where you're discovering cars, etc. But I love the tech trees in this game, as you are, one thing leads to another. You can either choose to spend other cards to build these cards, or you can use these tokens. But what I like most is the actual tech trees themselves, where cards act as pure prerequisites for other cards. And you've got to be as efficient as you can, waste as little time as you can, upgrade your player board to take more actions, to hold more cards in your hand, that kind of thing. This one fits a really nice gap of being a pretty involved and satisfying civilization style game, but with a very low rules overhead. So I think that's a really nice balance. I like everything this game does. The only thing that I'm slightly concerned about is the replayability, because a lot of these cards, despite leading to different tech trees, most of them do the same thing. They either let you climb a track, give you victory points, or give you kind of bonus tokens. So they're not terribly exciting about what they do, and that's what the game involves. It's pretty much just going through these tech trees. And progressing on and on and on, and it's not about the individual powers of the cards or anything. It's not what the game's about, but sometimes you want that little spark and a little bit of interest in what these cards do just to differentiate each play. Whereas this one, you're kind of doing the same thing from start to finish, but what it does well, and it is a recommendation for me. I think this one is terribly overlooked, but yeah, longevity, I'm slightly concerned about it. So that is Progress, that Evolution of Technology. And the final game that I played this month, or the older existing game I played this month, is Babalonia. So I played this one last night at 3 players. This one is a bit like Docmus. This one is that kind of route building style game, as you're placing things onto the board. You're like in that through the desert go style thing. And in fact, there's no board image here. No, in fact, a little bit here. This one is by Ryan Knizia himself, and this one might be my favourite route building game maybe ever. I think this is absolutely fantastic. I often talk about on the channel games with agonising decisions. This one has that in spades. You probably have 3 or 4 options at a time on a turn that are really strong, and if you choose one, you're pretty much forsaking the other ones, because they'll all be gobbled up by the other players by the time it gets back round to you. What a brilliant game this is. I every time I played this one, I liked it more than the last time. It's so pure, so clean, loads of ways to score. All of them are good, all of them inviting, interesting player powers you can go for. And yeah, probably amongst Knizia's best games, and that is saying something. This is top tier for him. So yeah, this one, I'd say, spoiler alert, be on the lookout for this one being on a rating changes and going upwards, because this game is phenomenal and I love it. So yeah, that concludes this this roundup really. So quite a few games here, slightly on the heavier side of things, which is nice because most recently I've only been playing lighter games because most of my new games have been the heavy ones. But yeah, had a bit more time this month. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have, please hit like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you all next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye.